In the summer of 1936, a brutal heat wave hit the American Midwest. Families lost their food, their water, and in some tragic cases, their own lives. Nobody had air conditioning back then to save them. Just a few feet beneath those very homes, something was already sitting there, quietly working. Ancient civilizations had trusted this exact system for thousands of years to cool their homes for free. Somehow, it disappeared from modern memory entirely. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why it vanished. You'll know who benefited from you forgetting it. And you'll know how to bring the same idea into your own home, to keep any room cool, without paying the power company a single cent. Picture the last really hot day you had. The power goes out. The air conditioner stops working. Within minutes, the house starts to feel different. The air gets thick. It gets heavy. You open every window in the house. It doesn't help. You stand in front of the fridge with the door wide open, just to feel that little bit of cold air. We've all done this. It feels a little silly looking back. But at that moment, it feels like the only option you have. Lying on the floor comes next. The tile feels cool for a few seconds. Then it warms up too. You start checking the clock, waiting for the power to come back, waiting for any kind of relief. That feeling of being trapped in your own home. Trapped by the heat. It's uncomfortable. It's frustrating. And for a lot of people, it's actually a little scary. Our great-grandparents never had this problem. Not because they had better technology. They had no technology at all. No air conditioners. No electric fans, even. And yet, their homes stayed just as cool, even in the middle of summer, even during the worst heat waves. Nobody in those homes sat around sweating, waiting for relief. Nobody checked a broken machine, hoping it would turn back on, because they never depended on a machine in the first place. They depended on something much simpler. Something that could never break down. Something that never needed electricity to work. Dirt beneath their feet did the job. Nothing fancier than that. Somehow, it was enough to keep their homes cool. No bills. No repairs. No panic when the power went out, because there was no power to go out in the first place. We've built entire lives around machines that can fail us. Machines that cost money every single month. But there was already a system, one that worked without any of that, one that people used for thousands of years. It's still sitting right there, underneath our homes, waiting to be used again. That raises a real question. If this system worked so well, why don't we see it anywhere today? Why isn't every house built with this? Somebody somewhere made a choice that affected millions of homes, and that choice buried this idea for almost 100 years. A few feet under the ground, the temperature barely changes. It stays cool all year, even in the middle of the hottest summer. That part is simple. That part makes sense. But knowing this fact is very different from putting it to use. Dirt alone doesn't cool a house. There has to be a way to move that coolness from the ground into the air you breathe. How did people actually do it? How did they take cool ground and turn it into a cool living room? This is where it gets interesting, because the answer isn't complicated. It isn't expensive. Once you see it, you'll wonder why nobody talks about it anymore. Beneath this story sits something darker. This system didn't just fade away on its own. Something replaced it. Something that needed a factory, a delivery truck, and a monthly bill. Once that new thing showed up, the old system started to look outdated, old-fashioned, something poor people used, not something modern families wanted. A cooling method that costs nothing. That never broke. That never needed a repairman. Why would anyone want to get rid of that? Unless somebody had a reason to make you forget it existed in the first place. 3 things are coming next. First, you'll see precisely how this ground cooling system works, step by step. Then you'll learn how ancient civilizations, on far-flung continents, discovered the same trick, thousands of years apart from each other. Finally, you'll find out why this got erased from modern memory, and who had every reason to make that happen. Once you understand how this system works, you'll never look at your own backyard the same way again. This system is called an earth tube. Some people call it an earth cooling tunnel. Once you see how simple it is, it almost feels too easy to be true. Start by digging a trench in the ground, deep enough to reach that steady cool temperature we talked about earlier. Then run a long pipe through that trench, sometimes 50 feet long, sometimes over 100 feet, depending on how much cooling you need. One end of the pipe stays open to the outside air. The other end connects into the house. Hot air from outside gets pulled into that pipe. As it travels through, it passes through all that cool earth surrounding it, and slowly, that hot air starts losing its heat. By the time it reaches the other end, inside your home, it can be 20 or even 30 degrees cooler than when it started. No electricity. No machine parts. Just air moving through cool ground. Simple, right? People didn't stop there either. Different civilizations, in far-flung parts of the world, found their own ways to use this same trick. Ancient Persian builders created tall towers called wind catchers. These towers caught wind high above the ground and pulled it down into underground channels, cooling that wind against the earth before it ever reached the living space. Some of these same builders even created underground structures called yakshals, ancient refrigerators, built entirely from earth, wind, and shade, in the middle of the desert. No electricity existed, and yet they kept ice frozen for months. Early American settlers used a similar idea with root cellars, rooms dug into the ground, usually connected to a small vent shaft above. Cool air would slowly move up through that shaft, pulling fresh air through the cellar and into nearby spaces. Different countries. Different centuries. Different materials. Yet the same basic idea kept repeating: let the earth do the cooling. Don't fight against nature. Work with it instead. These weren't small experiments. Entire civilizations relied on this exact idea to survive in some of the hottest places on Earth: Persia, the American Southwest, places where summer heat could easily kill someone without proper cooling. None of them needed a power plant. None of them needed a monthly bill. A shovel, some patience, and an understanding of how the ground actually works. That's all it took. If this idea worked for thousands of years, across such different parts of the world, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Why did we ever stop using it? The honest answer is a little uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with the earth tube not working. It has everything to do with money. Electric refrigeration started showing up in regular homes during the 1920s and 30s. Mechanical air conditioning followed soon after, and suddenly, a brand new industry was forming around cooling. Companies needed to sell machines. They needed people to buy units, pay for installation, and keep paying every single month for electricity. That's where the real profit was. Try seeing it from their side for a moment. You cannot sell someone a hole in the ground. You cannot put a company logo on dirt. There's no repair visit needed for a trench, no monthly bill for moving air through cool earth. An earth tube makes no one rich. It just works, year after year, without needing anyone's help. Companies selling machines had a real problem. The old system worked too well, and it cost nothing. That's not good for business. Slowly, something started to shift. Advertisements began showing air conditioning as a symbol of success. A shiny new machine humming in the window became proof that a family had made it. Meanwhile, anything connected to the ground, to old methods, to earth cooling, quietly got pushed aside, labeled old-fashioned, something poor families used because they couldn't afford anything better. Here's the twist most people never realize. It was never about which method worked better. The earth tube still worked just as well as it always had. What changed was the story being told about it. A perfectly good system got rebranded as primitive, not because it failed, but because it couldn't be sold in a store. This system never vanished for good. It just went quiet for a while. Off-grid builders and engineers have been rediscovering earth tubes in recent years, not as some old forgotten trick, but as a genuine, working solution for modern homes. Some builders now run earth tubes into their basements, cooling the air before it even reaches a smaller air conditioning unit, cutting their electricity use dramatically. Others have built entire homes and cabins that rely fully on this method, with zero cooling costs, even in places that regularly hit over 100 degrees. Nothing about the technology stopped working. It was only forgotten, buried under decades of advertising, and an entire industry that needed people to believe the ground beneath their feet had nothing left to offer. Underneath all of this sits the real lesson. It was never really about cooling systems at all. It was about how easily we let convenience convince us to forget what actually works. If forgotten ideas like this one interest you, hit subscribe, because there's an entire series of these hiding in plain sight. And the next one might just change the way you look at your own home forever.